This is Michael Popok, and that means it's time for Legal AF After Dark. Alabama Supreme Court, on the heels of the United States Supreme Court decision ripping away a woman's right to choose that had been enshrined in the Constitution for over 50 years, has decided now that embryos created during IVF are babies, and therefore they need protection, just like born children and their adult parents from under constitutional and criminal law. So now on IVF embryos, even ones that haven't been implanted yet or transferred yet, have the same people rights as everybody else in Alabama. You can see how dark a path we're going down here and what Alabama has decided to do. But what choice did they have, given that the Supreme Court gave them carte blanche to make decisions like this about a woman's right to choose and family planning? This from a party that says they are pro-family. Now you've got judges and IVF clinics in Alabama and across the country scrambling to figure out what to do about this. We talk about it. We break it down because we got to in only one place on the dial, on the MeidasTouch network. We call it Legal AF. And here's a clip of our discussion.
I want to talk about this IVF ruling. I don't want to have a whole lengthy discussion on it. We've covered it elsewhere, and we're going to have other coverage on it as well. But I think it's important that we address it here on Legal AF. And Michael Popok, I know this also has a personal element to you that you and I had discussed before the show. And just, if everybody doesn't know what the ruling is, it's that this MAGA Republican stacked Alabama State Supreme Court ruled that frozen embryos are the same as children, and thus an IVF clinic can be charged with wrongful death if any of the frozen embryos are destroyed, the same type of wrongful death charge as if a child or other human being was killed. So in response, IVF clinics said, look, if there's any issue ever with a frozen embryo that gets destroyed, or or something happens to it, even through the regular process of providing clinical services, we could be charged with murder or wrongful death, then we can't operate. It's impossible for us to operate. These are the types of decisions that we have to, in one of the examples of the cases before the Alabama Supreme Court, it involved another patient kind of getting into a room and destroying something. But outside of the patient destroying a frozen embryo, another patient destroying a frozen embryo, every day as part of the clinical services, there are decisions about, okay, are there 10 frozen embryos, and how to maintain the frozen embryos? What do you do if there is a birth? What do you do if there isn't a birth? And if you're going to be charged with murder for every one of those decisions, and then you can extrapolate these kind of RICO cases, if you will, wrongful death, murder type RICO cases, where everybody in the clinic, from the secretary all the way up to the CEO to all of the doctors, are getting charged with murder, as well as potentially even the patients themselves being charged with murder, then you can't function. And this is not something that happened out of nowhere. This is actually what people who were having all the warnings about, if you overturn Roe v. Wade, this is going to happen. And this is what happened. I understand right now there are a lot of Republicans out there who are now trying to act like this wasn't their position, but it was their position. They put judges who believe. And then when what happened ultimately is what they wanted, they then act like they're the firefighters when they were actually the arsonists, and now they want to put out their own fire. Some of them are applauding this ruling, but this is a predictable ruling based on the overturning of Roe v. Wade, because if you had Roe v. Wade in place, you could never have such a declaration as the one here, that a frozen embryo is basically given the same rights as a child, and that stems from overturning Roe v. Wade. Popok, I want you to share your thoughts as we close out this episode.
Yeah, it's no secret that my wife and I used IVF. We're just coincidentally, my wife's pregnant not through IVF, but we are big supporters of it. And under the Alabama law, because we made a decision with our medical provider that 2 of 6 of our embryos were not viable, I could be charged apparently with wrongful death and or murder in the state of Alabama. For a party that claims to be pro-family, they are the exact opposite. And everything, as you said, Ben, that they have done has led us to this moment as a natural extension. There's no difference between Josh Hawley calling embryos extrauterine children, calling them unborn children. Listen to the language of the right to life movement, as they like to call themselves, and them not understanding the difference between an embryo, a fetus, and a child, and the live, already born parents who are supposed to be making decisions about the most intimate affairs of their life. And as you said, Ben, when you put on in Alabama, there was one woman justice there, and there was one dissent. I think it was one dissent, and the Chief Justice, in his concurrence, talked about everything that was just ripped from the Bible. That these embryonic entities have the face of God imprinted on them. This is actually in a legal analysis made by the Chief Judge of Alabama. And then they wonder, after they found that the person, and I never really got to the bottom, maybe that you can tell me offline or here. I never found out why that patient was wandering around the embryonic nursery, knocking over test tubes or whatever they're contained in. But they said, oh, well, for the 3 couples that lost embryos, they can sue that person for wrongful death because we find that they are children, or as Nikki Haley likes to call them, they're babies. Embryos are babies too, when they are not. But the natural extension of that may have not have been clear to Sam Alito, who wrote the Dobbs decision overturning Roe versus Wade, putting it into the hands of states. By the way, 12 of which, now including Alabama, believe that personhood starts at the embryonic period, embryonic moment, which is, you see where this is going. The fact that they may not have considered that the very next day, the University of Alabama would stop all IVF treatment. And I can't even, my heart goes out to the families that were in the middle of a transfer or were in the middle of the process, and this is their last hope for children. And now in Alabama, the lawyers and doctors saw the writing on the wall immediately from the Alabama decision. And this goes back to the heartlessness of the Republican Party, to be frank, especially when it comes to women and family. When Sam Alito said, in ripping away a woman's constitutional right to choose after 50 years, enshrined in the U.S. Constitution through Roe versus Wade, and a line of other cases, not just Roe versus Wade, that led us to that moment about reproductive rights and privacy. When he said, basically, as only a old white male who never born a child can say, it's not for us to worry about what happens. It's a states' rights issue. Each state should decide whether they're going to have a constitutional or other right for a woman to choose, but it's not anywhere in the Constitution, and it was wrong the day it was written, and it's wrong now, and we're finally going to fix this historical wrong once and for all, and leave it to the states and let them do it, and we can't be concerned about what happens. Really? Now you're watching the mad scramble. I mean, if it wasn't so tragic, I'd be laughing over it, about watching politicians in Alabama and on the national stage trying to figure out how they can both be pro-family and also allow somebody who inadvertently or intentionally terminates an embryo because of non-viability or other reasons, why they should be charged with murder or wrongful death. This is the problem of the party, because their morals and law are not they don't intersect properly. And so when you, as you said, when these movements led by the Josh Hawleys of the world and all the other right wingers try, what you get is what you got here, which is a judiciary in Alabama that now has codified this right to life movement and come out with decisions like embryos are babies. And now what I'm hoping is that they'll never be able to fix it fast enough. And this will then be another wedge issue that the Democrats need, along with the Dobbs decision, to animate and motivate their base and get them to the polls for Joe Biden. And the fortunate thing is, every time, and I've said this on one of my other hot takes, and I think midweek, polling is one thing. I mean, you and I we could do whole hot takes, and we have, about where the polls are at any given moment. But that's not voting. Voting is not polling. And every time the American people have had a binary choice, thumbs up or thumbs down, since including the midterms, it's been in favor of the Democratic agenda and Joe Biden. Every special election that's mattered, every ruling related to women's rights that matters, have all gone our way since the presidential election. That is what I look for electoral success in November, not this handicapping of how many points up or down Joe Biden is in any given moment.
Look, I think my hope is that there is, a legislative solution quickly to this crisis that was created by Republicans. But I also still, firmly want people to have all of the data and realize that there was all of this legislation, like the Life at Conception Act and various iterations of these bills that had been working their way through the House of Representatives that MAGA Republicans had always signed on to. Like this was their position. And now the same people who affix their names to these bills are saying that they actually, they want to fix it. Y'all created the issue. Y'all are the arsonists. That's the issue. And there's so many issues like that where they start the fire and then try to create chaos and in a very predatory way, try to prey on people's vulnerabilities with the chaos and harm that they created. And that's why it's just important that we get out the raw data. We just let people know what's up. I mean, where do you stand? Here are the issues. Here are the facts. Here are the data. Here's the data. Make educated decisions based on that. And that's what we stand for here at Legal AF. That's what we stand for here at the MeidasTouch Network. And that's what we know you stand for as members of the Meidas Mighty and Legal AFers. Thank you so much for watching this episode.
Well, if you like lawyers talking about things at the intersection of law, politics, and justice, that they know what they're talking about, you've reached the right place on the dial, the MeidasTouch Network. You're already here. Don't change the dial. Don't change to go to another YouTube station. Stay right here and help them get to 3 million free subscribers by November's election. It's all free. It's just your fingers and thumbs. It's free, subscribe. And then if you like what that particular clip's all about or that type of show, and you know all about us already, and you're already part of our audience, take the clip and send it off to friends and family and others in your life and say, you know that show, Legal AF? Here's an example of it. Why don't you join in for the full show on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and then on audio podcast platforms of your choice. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, that was Legal AF. I am one of the anchors, Michael Popok. So until my next hot take and my next Legal AF, we invite you to join our audience.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.